We hear more no's than yeses. We get more rejections than acceptances. This is just a fact. You know, I've shared this story before, so I won't go into great depth, but after receiving one of my rejections when I applied for what was at that time my dream job, and, you know, and I was sitting at home and, you know, with my head down and so very upset, Tammy, my wife, came to me, you know, put her hand on my shoulder, and she said the following. She said to me, Tal, do your students know how many times you fail? And the answer at that time was no. And that changed the way I teach. I started to share many more of my failures, because what my students see is me on stage. They see the books that are out in Portuguese, and they see the successes. They don't see the number of rejections that I've received. You know, in my office, I don't have it on now, but I have a frame of a certificate that I received from one of my publishers when my first book became a bestseller. It's not I don't have it on my wall now, but I had it a few years ago. So that's in front. At the back of it, I put letters, dozens and dozens of letters of rejection that I received from publishers. Learn to fail or fail to learn. We get many more rejections than we get yeses. And the fortunate thing is that you only need one yes. Whether it's one publisher to say yes, whether it's one workplace to say yes, whether it's one partner to say yes. Because we do hear rejections. We're rejected by potential partners, we're rejected by potential jobs, and we're rejected by potential publishers. That's part of life. And it's never fun. I'm not saying, okay, so I received 100 rejections, now the 101st rejection will be easy for me. It's never fun. It's never easy to hear a no, but it's part of life. And it's an inevitable part of a successful life. So that's the first thing to embrace. You will hear many no's. And even after you find your job, which you will find, you'll still hear no's in other areas. You'll still experience disappointments in other places. It's part of life. Here is the thing, though. We need to remind ourselves to keep on trying. Why? For two reasons. Because it's the only way to succeed. You know, Adam Grant, who, as some of you know, was my student at Harvard. Today, he's a professor at Wharton Business School. In his wonderful book, Originals, writes about the most creative people, the most innovative individuals. And one of the characteristics that he talks about there is that they're also the ones who fail the most times. They apply for more jobs than others. They write more manuscripts that are rejected than others. They do more experiments than others. Experiments that fail. And that's why they succeed. Dean Simonton, University of California, Davis, did research on extraordinary people. And what he showed was that the most creative scientists or artists, the Da Vincis of the world, the O'Keeffes of the world, the Marie Curies, the Einsteins of the world, they are the most creative scientists and artists, and they're the ones who have failed the most times. Think about those when you write your next letter. when you submit your next resume, when you get the next rejection. That's part of the story. So that's one reason why it's so important to continue trying. The second reason why it's important to continue trying is because when we stop trying, we lose energy and we feel weak. And it's when we try, when we do something, even if we fail, that's when we actually encourage ourselves. So the doing actually leads us to want to do more. It's the not doing, it's the waiting that weakens us and brings us down. So the act of doing is important in and of itself as part of the encouragement process. And one final thing that can help: write about it. It's great that you talked about it now. In addition, write about it. Write about your experience. Write about how difficult it is to be rejected. Express it, not just here in your mind, also on paper. There's research by Jamie Pennybaker, who many of you have encountered, who writes about journaling, on people who were just laid off, who were just fired from their job. And one group of people who were fired were asked to write about their experience. And it's very hard to be fired, to be rejected. So they wrote about their difficult experience. And then there was a group who was fired who didn't write about it. They just continued business as usual. After 6 months, the group that wrote about it was feeling a lot better than the group who didn't. 6 months later, and they only wrote about it, for 4 days, 20 minutes each day. It had an effect 6 months later. And 6 months later, those who wrote about it were more likely to find themselves in a job than those who didn't write in their journal. So writing made them feel better, and it made them more effective. It energized them and made them more likely to actually find a job later. But the most important thing is to keep on keeping on.